Once upon a time, in a small town in the United States, there was a boy named Jake. Jake was very smart and hardworking, but he had one big problem. He was not good at speaking English. He could understand English, but when he tried to speak, he felt nervous and forgot words. Because of this, he was afraid to talk to people, and he often stayed quiet. One day, Jake's teacher, Mrs. Smith, noticed his problem. She called him after class and said, "Jake, I see that you are a bright student, but you don't speak much in class. Why is that?" Jake looked down and said, "I am scared to make mistakes. My English is not good." Mrs. Smith smiled and said, "Everyone makes mistakes when they learn something new. The important thing is to practice and not be afraid." Mrs. Smith gave Jake some simple tips to improve his English speaking skills. The first tip was to listen more. She told Jake to watch English movies, listen to English songs, and pay attention to how people talk. She said, "When you hear English every day, your brain will get used to it." Jake started watching movies with subtitles. He chose simple movies where people spoke slowly. At first, it was hard to understand everything, but over time, he learned new words and how to pronounce them. He also started listening to songs and repeating the lyrics. This made learning fun for him. The second tip Mrs. Smith gave Jake was to speak every day. She told him to practice speaking English, even if he was alone. Talk to yourself in the mirror. Describe what you see around you, or read books out loud, she said. Jake felt a little silly talking to himself, but he did it anyway. He looked in the mirror and said, "My name is Jake. I am wearing a blue shirt. I have brown hair." He also started reading his favorite books out loud. Slowly, he became more comfortable with speaking. Mrs. Smith's third tip was to think in English. She explained, "If you always think in your own language and then try to translate into English, it will be slow and difficult. Instead, try to think directly in English." This was hard for Jake at first, but he started with small things. When he saw an apple, he didn't think of the word in his own language first. He just thought, "Apple." When he wanted to drink water, he thought, "I need water," instead of translating in his head. This made speaking faster and easier. The fourth tip was to find a speaking partner. Mrs. Smith told Jake to talk to his classmates in English. Find a friend who also wants to improve and practice together, she suggested. Jake was shy, but he decided to ask his friend, Emily, for help. Emily was also learning English, so they made a plan. Every day, they would speak only in English for at least 30 minutes. At first, they made mistakes, but they laughed and kept trying. This gave Jake confidence because he knew he was not alone. Another important tip was to be patient. Mrs. Smith told Jake, "Learning a language takes time. Don't feel bad if you make mistakes. Keep going, and one day you will speak fluently." Jake remembered this whenever he felt frustrated. He kept practicing, listening, and speaking. He also started writing in English every day. He wrote about his day, his dreams, and his thoughts. This helped him learn new words and improve his grammar. Months passed, and Jake improved a lot. One day, There was a big event at school and Jake had to give a speech in English. He was nervous, but he remembered Mrs. Smith's advice. He took a deep breath and started speaking. He made a few small mistakes, but he kept going. When he finished, everyone clapped, and his teacher smiled proudly. Jake realized that the key to good communication is not just knowing big words. It is about confidence, practice, and not being afraid to make mistakes. From that day, he never hesitated to speak English again. If you want to improve your English speaking skills, remember Jake's journey. Listen more. Speak every day. Think in English. Find a partner. And be patient. With time and effort, you will become a great communicator. Keep practicing and don't give up.